Hi there, this is Rishabh and I welcome you to the Pythonverse series. In this video, that is video number 16, we are going to talk about writing files in Python. Now this is very interesting. I'm very excited about this video because this is our first interaction with persisting data. So far, whatever programs we have written, whatever inputs we have read from the users, their life cycle was limited to the life cycle of the program itself. As soon as we exited out of the program, those data variables, they were also gone. They were not available after the program exited. But in this video, we are going to talk about files, how exactly we have to write files in Python. And the best part is, even when the program's life cycle is over, even when the program has exited, the files, the data stored in the files, it stays, and we can read that data again. We will see that in a future video on reading files in Python, that how exactly we can read the data back to the program. But for now, our focus is how exactly we have to write files in Python. So there are so many use cases, like almost every software in the world has this need to write some data which can be persisted. Now there are different mechanisms for persistence, files being the simplest one. Like you might have already heard about things like databases, and there are different ways in which data is stored inside of databases. Also there are let's say that the RDBMS databases, then there are NoSQL databases. So depending upon what the situation is, we store data accordingly. But this is the starting point of all of that complexity. So we are going to start by writing a very simple file, and here is the syntax to create a file in Python. So file object, so this name can be anything. It could be something more specific also. For example, tasks file. This is just a variable name which we are giving to the file object. So file equals open, then you have to specify the name of the file, and then this is the mode. I'll be talking about what exactly mode is in a couple of seconds. So file name can be any file name which you want to create, and then the syntax to write data to the file is that we have to use this file object, and we have to call the write method on it, and we have to pass the content which we want to write to the file. So there are different modes now which are available. So we have the W mode, which we have the append mode, and we have the binary mode. So when we are writing in the W mode, it means the write mode. So even if the file already exists, what it will do is it will overwrite the contents of the file, and it will replace it with the new contents which we are passing. Whereas if we do not want to overwrite the contents, then what we have to do is then we have to use the append mode. It appends to the file, writes new content to the file, discards the content if already present, discards the previous content. Okay, then B is for binary. So if we are writing binary data, then we have to use the B mode. In this specific video, because we are going to write strings, so we'll be using the W mode. So yes, it's as simple to write files in Python. You just have to open the file, you just have to write the file. There is one more thing which I would like to mention here. So far in this series, we haven't talked about exception handling, even though we are going to cover it, but it is very important to handle exceptions when we are dealing with file IO in Python. So let me actually mention that. I will talk about it in detail in the next videos, but I think it's important. So what exactly is exception handling? Except some exception, do something else. So exception handling basically means that how exactly your program should behave if some error occurs. For example, if I'm trying to write to a file, let's say I do not have the permission to write to that specific location, then what happens? Or let's say in case of division, for example, if I'm trying to divide by 0, what happens in such a scenario? Or let's say in case of some kind of network communication, if I'm trying to connect to a network, and if the internet connection is not there, then what happens? So all these are exception scenarios, and they need to be taken care of. So in Python, we have the exception handling mechanism, and here is the syntax of the exception handling mechanism. We will talk about exception handling in detail, but I just wanted to give you a brief so that when we are writing to the file, we can use this without having any problems, or maybe we can skip exception handling for this video, but I believe you have got the gist of it, that why exactly exception handling can be important when we are dealing with the files. So there can be so many errors which can occur when we are dealing with files. For example, file not found, the path is not correct, we don't have permissions, and so on. So there can be so many issues. We will need to deal with each one of them separately. So yep, that's why I have just introduced exception handling, but I won't be using it. Not recommended, but just for this video because we want to keep it simple. Cool. Now let's look at an example of writing a file like in Python. So here we have the example. Let's say that our Python coroutine has following tasks and he wants to store them in a file. So there is a list of tasks. For example, these are the tasks, and what we want to do is we want to create a file with all these tasks inside of that file. Cool. So let's do one thing. First of all, let us just store these tasks one by one in a list data structure. Then we can create tasks.py. So here are the tasks. Let me create a list and let me just push all of these as strings in my list. So here we have the first, then we have the second one. Cool. And yep, then we have the third one. Okay, yeah. Cool. And then the fourth. And similarly, let's add the fifth one here, and then the last one. These are some just these are just some random tasks which I have picked up. You can have something more specific as well. Cool. So let us just remove this, and here we go. Cool. So we have all the tasks in the form of a list now. Now what we have to do is let's just create a string out of these tasks again. This is just for the showcase purpose. Like you may find me crazy that I had a string, then I converted it to a list. But in most of the real world scenarios where you're taking the input from the user, more often than not, you will be getting the data in the form of a list only. So that's why for task in tasks. Now look at this. This is another way of traversing the list. I'm not using the I variable this time, but I am like this time my iterator is the task itself. So I'll be going over these tasks one by one, right? Cool. Okay, let's have the data as well as a variable. So data is currently an empty string, right? Now data plus equals task, and data plus equals /n to leave a space. So now after this for loop executes, all these tasks will be stored as a string in this bigger string, that is data. Now let's open a file. Open, and let me just call this as a file. File equals open, and let's just give it a name. Let's say tasks.txt. Open it in the W mode. Now let's call file.write, and let's just pass the data. Cool. Now what next? Next is file.close. It's important to close the file, and by now this data should have been written to this file. Let me just print data written to file successfully. Awesome. So now let's go ahead and try to run this code. We have Python video number, what video is this? Video number 16, and then tasks.py. Let us just execute this. Data returned to file successfully, And here we have the tasks.txt file. Now if you notice, this is an interesting thing to notice, that the tasks.txt is created in the same directory where you have executed this script. The reason being, when you wrote open tasks.txt, you didn't give a path explicitly, which means that wherever my Python, whatever is the from whatever location I launched my Python script, there itself it created the file, and hence this tasks.txt is created outside of my video directory or my script directory. Let me just open this file. So it has printed task, which means that we have done something wrong. Okay, it should be task. That was a silly mistake. This shouldn't be a string, this should be a variable. So yes, now let's just execute this once again, and here we go. Now if you notice that because I used the W mode, that is the write mode, this has been overwritten. So create a GitHub repository, then share the link with other devs over email. I mean, all the tasks, they're present in the file now. Cool. And the previous one has been overwritten because of the W mode. And yes, so that's it. That's all what I wanted to talk about. This is like writing files in Python is as simple as writing this code snippet. But as I mentioned, there are so many things which are still to be covered. For example, adding certain validations, checking whether the file exists or not, and then doing things like passing on explicit paths where exactly we want to create the file. So there is a lot of things which are still to be explored, but I wanted to keep this video very introductory, very simple. We will be talking about more complex topics in the upcoming videos, but for this that's all we wanted to do, like just create a new file, write some data to that file. So I hope you enjoyed this small little video, this small little I would say exercise which we did in this video. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next one, and bye bye.